Okay, let's unpack this. Sometimes you hear a story and it just perfectly captures that really difficult thing about our social lives.
Yeah, that paradox.
Exactly. How much we need other people, how essential connection is, but also how easily we can be excluded or hurt.
It's a core tension, isn't it?
Mm.
We're incredibly social creatures, maybe the most social, but managing all that,
Yeah.
it takes a lot of mental energy. And yeah, rejection, exclusion, that pain is very real.
It really is. I was thinking about that 2021 story, Marissa Mice, 23 in New York. She found out her so-called friends planned a birthday party specifically to leave her out.
Awful. Just awful. But sadly, not that uncommon an experience.
Right, but what happened next was so modern. A guy overheard them planning it, felt bad, and put the whole thing on TikTok.
So this private hurt goes public. Viral even.
14 million views, kind of viral. But what Marissa did next, that's where I think it connects perfectly to what we're diving into today, social psychology.
Okay, how so?
Well, she didn't just get crushed by it. She took that really immediate situational social pain, that feeling of being excluded, and turned it into action. She started this group, No More Lonely Friends.
Oh, wow. Arranging meetups for strangers.
Exactly. People looking to connect. And that focus, the immediate situation, the social context, the resulting behavior, that feels like the heart of this field. So let's nail it down. What exactly is social psychology?
Right. So at its core, it's the scientific study of how people's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are influenced by the actual, imagined, or implied presence of others.
Implied presence. So even just thinking someone might find out influences us.
Absolutely. And it's different from, say, personality psychology, which looks more at stable traits within a person.
Or sociology, which looks at the bigger group level, like societal structures.
Precisely. Social psychology zooms in on those situational factors, the immediate social environment. It's like the unseen gravity pulling on us when we're around others.
The pressure cooker of human interaction, yeah. And you mentioned it's always been tied to real-world stuff.
Oh, definitely. Its roots go back partly trying to understand things like prejudice after the U.S. Civil War.
Yeah.
But it really surged after World War II.
Trying to make sense of the Holocaust, things like that.
Exactly. Understanding obedience, conformity, prejudice on that scale. And social psychologists were involved in the U.S. Civil Rights Movement, too, providing key evidence, like the Clark and Clark doll studies in the 50s.
Showing how discrimination impacts self-esteem, even in kids.
Yeah, powerful stuff. It's always had this practical, sometimes urgent social mission.
So our mission today, then, is to explore some of those invisible forces. The snap judgments we make, the pressure from the group, why we act the way we do when the crowd changes everything. Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. We almost have to start with just the sheer power of having other people around and how sometimes it can stop us from doing what's right.
You're talking about the failure to help, the bystander effect.
Yeah, that research came directly out of a really horrific event, didn't it?
It did. The 1964 murder of Kitty Genovese in New York. The initial reports, though later debated in detail, suggested many neighbors heard or saw something, but didn't intervene or even call the police for a long time. It shocked people.
And it spurred researchers, Darley and Latane.
John Darley and Bill Latany, yes.
Yeah.
They designed these classic experiments to figure out why people don't help when others are present.
And the results are still just staggering. Tell us about those experiments.
Well, they'd stage emergencies, like smoke filling a room participants were in, or they'd hear someone apparently having a seizure in the next room over an intercom.
Okay. And if the participant was alone?
If they were alone, they took action, went to get help, reported the smoke about 75% of the time. Pretty high.
Okay, makes sense. But add other people.
The moment you put just one other person in that room, another bystander who is often an actor told not to react, that number plummeted. It dropped to like 50%, sometimes even lower depending on the setup.
50%. Just because one other person is there? That's huge. What's going on? Why does someone else's presence paralyze us?
It seems to be, well, two main things happening in our heads. First, there's diffusion of responsibility. Meaning the responsibility to help gets spread out. If others are there, you feel less personal obligation. You think someone else will probably call 911 or they look like they know what to do.
Okay, that makes a grim sort of sense. What's the second thing?
The second is we use others as a guide to interpret the situation, especially if it's ambiguous. Is that smoke? Is that person really hurt? We look around to see how others are reacting.
And if they're not reacting?
If they look calm, maybe because they're looking at you and trying to figure it out too, then everyone concludes, oh, maybe it's not actually an emergency. We sort of collectively mislead each other into inaction. It's called pluralistic ignorance.
Wow. Collectively misleading each other. Okay, so that's the pressure of inaction. What about the pressure to actively go along with the group, even when you know they're wrong? That brings us to conformity, right?
Absolutely. And the classic work here is Solomon Asch's experiments from 1951, the line judgment studies.
Ah, yes, these are famous. Simple setup, wasn't it?
Deceptively simple. Participants just had to look at a standard line, then pick which of 3 comparison lines matched it. One choice was clearly, obviously correct.
Easy peasy, Hess.
Unless you're sitting in a room with, say, 6 or 7 other people who are actually Confederates actors working for Asch, and on certain trials, they all start giving the same clearly wrong answer before it's your turn.
And people just went along with it, even though they could see the right answer.
A shocking amount did. Participants conformed to that obviously incorrect majority answer about 35% of the time.
35%. That's more than a third of the time, denying what their own eyes were telling them. That's incredible.
It really is. And it highlights the 2 main reasons we conform. Why do you think people did it?
Well, maybe they thought, gosh, if everyone else sees it that way, maybe I'm wrong. Like, maybe my eyes are tricking me.
That's definitely part of it. That's informational social influence. We conform because we want to be right. We assume the group has better information, especially when we're a bit uncertain or the task is difficult.
Okay. But Asch's task was designed to be easy, wasn't it? So there must be another reason.
Exactly. The other big driver is normative social influence. We conform because we want to be liked, accepted, to fit in. We don't want to look foolish or be the odd one out.
The social awkwardness factor. Don't rock the boat.
Pretty much. Even with strangers. The pressure not to stand out is powerful. Imagine that pressure with your friends or your colleagues or in a political group.
Yeah, you can see how that scales up dramatically. Which leads us, I suppose, to the most extreme form of social influence, obedience to authority. Milgram's experiments.
Stanley Milgram, yes. Haunting studies, also spurred by trying to understand the atrocities of World War II. How could ordinary people participate in terrible things just because someone told them?
Well, he set up that experiment with the teacher and the learner, the shocks.
Right. The participant was always the teacher, instructed by an experimenter in a lab coat, to deliver increasingly intense electric shocks to a learner, an actor, whenever the learner made a mistake on a memory task.
And the shocks weren't real, but the participant thought they were.
They definitely thought they were. They could hear the learner grunting, shouting, eventually demanding to be let out, and then silence.
And the infamous result.
Nearly 2/3, around 65% of the participants, went all the way. They delivered the maximum 450-volt shock, labeled XXX, simply because the authority figure kept saying, please continue, or the experiment requires that you continue.
It's just chilling every time I hear it.
Yeah.
65%.
Yeah.
But I remember reading some later analysis. Did they find a point where people were most likely to resist if they were going to?
Yes, that's a crucial insight. It wasn't a gradual drop-off. The critical decision point seemed to be around the 150-volt mark.
Why 150?
That was the first time the learner explicitly protested and demanded to be released. Said his heart was bothering him. About 80% of the participants who eventually disobeyed stopped right there, at that 150-volt point.
Ah, so that was the moment of truth for most resistors.
It seems so.
Yeah.
If they could push past that first direct plea, that first real ethical confrontation, they were much more likely to go all the way. It suggests the power of authority is immense, but that initial moment of defiance, standing up to it early, is key.
That's fascinating. It makes it less about gradual moral decay and more about overcoming that initial hump of disobedience. Okay, so we've seen how the group affects our actions, helping, conforming, obeying. Let's shift gears a bit.
Where are we going now?
To how we think about other people, our internal judge, you might say, social cognition, how we perceive and make sense of the social world around us.
Right. Because we're not just passively influenced, we're actively trying to figure people out, constantly. And we do it incredibly quickly. Research shows we form initial impressions of unfamiliar faces in literally 100 milliseconds, a tenth of a second.
Wow. That's barely conscious. What are we judging in that instant?
Primarily, it seems, 2 key dimensions. Trustworthiness, is this person friend or foe? And competence or dominance, are they capable, strong, likely to be in charge?
And these snap judgments, they actually matter in the real world.
Oh, absolutely. There's that striking research by Alexander Todorov. He had people rate political candidates' faces purely on perceived confidence, just from photos, without knowing who they were.
Okay. And
Those snap judgments of confidence predicted the outcome of about 70% of actual U.S. Senate and House elections.
wait, seriously, 70%, just based on how competent someone looks in a photo? That's terrifying.
It is a bit unsettling, isn't it? It suggests these rapid, maybe not entirely rational facial judgments can have huge consequences.
Does it mean we're just doomed to be superficial? Or can we override these biases?
We can certainly become aware of them, which is the first step. But they run deep. Think
Yep.
about the beautiful is good stereotype.
The idea that we assume attractive people have all sorts of other positive qualities.
Exactly. We tend to think they're also more sociable, skilled, friendly, intelligent, you name it. Physical attractiveness acts as a powerful social cue, kind of halo.
Which is funny because didn't you mention something about what we actually find attractive often being quite average?
That's another fascinating finding. Yes. Studies have created composite faces by digitally averaging multiple individual faces like 8, 16, or even 32 faces together.
Okay.
And consistently, these averaged composite faces are rated as more attractive than the individual faces that went into making them.
So the secret to beauty is blending in, not standing out too much.
In a way, yes. Averageness, along with facial symmetry and certain youthful features, seems to signal genetic health, or perhaps just feels more familiar and less potentially threatening to our brains. It's psychologically comfortable.
Comfortable, maybe, but relying on these quick cues means our inner judge must make a lot of mistakes, right? Which brings us to attributions, explaining why people do what they do.
Exactly. Attribution theory looks at how we explain the causes of behavior, both our own and others. We try to figure out if the cause was internal, something about the person, like their personality or effort.
Or external, something about the situation, like luck or pressure or the difficulty of the task.
Right. And we tend to have a very strong bias when explaining other people's behavior. It's called the fundamental attribution error, or FAE.
The FAE, okay, what is it?
It's the tendency for us as observers to overestimate the impact of internal dispositional factors, like personality traits, and underestimate the impact of situational factors when explaining someone else's actions.
So if someone cuts us off in traffic, we think, what a jerk. Internal trait, not maybe they're rushing to the hospital.
Well,
external situation.
Precisely. Or if a student fails a test, the observer might quickly think they're lazy or they're not smart enough, rather than considering maybe the test was unfairly hard or they had a family emergency. We jump to character judgments.
It sounds like a fundamental lack of empathy, almost. But here's the twist, right? When it's our behavior we're explaining, the script flips completely.
It often does. That's the self-serving bias. It's how we tend to protect our own self-esteem.
How does that work?
Simple. When we succeed, we tend to take personal credit. We make an internal attribution. I passed the test because I'm smart. Or I won the game because I played well.
Okay, that makes sense. We like feeling good about ourselves.
But when we fail, we're much more likely to blame external factors, make an external attribution. I failed because the test was unfair, the referee was biased, the instructions were confusing.
Take the credit, dodge the blame.
It's a very human tendency. Protect the ego. So yeah, our inner judge is quick, relies on shortcuts like attractiveness, makes fundamental errors about others, and is decidedly self-serving when looking inwards.
Okay, so if our judgments are so biased, and we have these mechanisms to protect our existing views, how do our attitudes ever actually change? Or how do people persuade us?
Good question. That leads us into the realm of attitudes, behavior change, and persuasion. Let's start with the discomfort we feel when our thoughts and actions don't line up. That's Leon Festinger's cognitive dissonance theory.
Right. Dissonance, that feeling of psychological tension when you hold two conflicting ideas or when your behavior contradicts your beliefs.
Exactly. And we're highly motivated to reduce that discomfort. We either change our behavior, change our belief, or kind of rationalize and add new beliefs to make it all fit together.
There's that classic experiment that shows this so well, the really boring task one.
Oh yeah, the peg-turning experiment. It's a perfect illustration. Participants did this incredibly tedious task for an hour, turning pegs on a board, just mind-numbing.
Then afterwards, they were asked to do the experimenter a favor, tell the next participant waiting outside that the task was actually really interesting and enjoyable, basically to lie.
Right. Now here's the key manipulation. Some participants were paid $20 to tell this lie, which was a decent amount of money back then. Others were paid only $1.
Okay, so who ended up actually believing the lie more?
The ones paid only $1.
Get out. Why?
Because the $20 group had plenty of external justification. I lied, sure, but hey, they paid me well. No real dissonance. But the $1 group, they lied for practically nothing. That creates dissonance. Why did I say that enjoyable thing about that awful task for just $1?
So they had to resolve that discomfort.
By convincing themselves. They couldn't easily take back the lie, and the $1 wasn't enough justification, so they changed their attitude towards the task. They later rated the boring task as significantly more enjoyable than the $20 group did. They essentially thought, I must not have disliked it that much if I was willing to say it was fun for only $1.
Wow. We literally trick ourselves to feel consistent. Okay, so that's how we change our own minds. What about changing other people's minds? The art of persuasion.
Right. A key model here is the elaboration likelihood model. It proposes two main routes of persuasion.
Two paths.
The first is the central route. This involves deep processing. You engage the audience with strong logical arguments, facts, evidence. They need to be motivated and able to think carefully about the message.
It sounds like the ideal, rational way. Debates, scientific papers.
Ideally, yes. But it requires effort from the audience. The other route, which is often easier and more common, especially in advertising or politics, is the peripheral route.
Peripheral, meaning not the main point.
Exactly. This route relies on superficial cues, things outside the actual argument's quality, like the attractiveness or credibility of the source, emotional appeals, celebrity endorsements, catchy jingles, even just sheer repetition.
If you're not paying close attention, these cues can sway you without you really thinking it through.
Precisely. It's persuasion on autopilot.
And salespeople, they've got tricks up their sleeves too, haven't they? Playing on our social tendencies.
Oh, absolutely. Classic techniques. There's the foot in the door technique.
Small request first, then big.
Yep. You get someone to agree to a small, easy request first, like signing a petition. Because they've complied once, they feel more committed, and they're more likely to agree to a larger related request later, like donating money or volunteering time.
Builds momentum. What about the opposite?
That's the door-in-the-face technique. You start with a huge, unreasonable request that you fully expect to be rejected.
Like asking for a $500 donation right off the bat.
Exactly. When they inevitably say no, you immediately follow up with a much smaller, more reasonable request. Your real target, maybe asking for just $20.
Ah, so it seems like a concession.
Right. The person feels like you've compromised, so they feel a subtle pressure to reciprocate and meet you halfway by agreeing to the smaller request. It works surprisingly often.
Sneaky.
Oh,
Okay, so we're bombarded with these persuasive attempts, central, peripheral, tricky sales tactics. And now, especially online, just waves of misinformation. Is there any way to kind of build up our defenses?
There is actually. It's a concept called inoculation, like a vaccine for the mind.
Inoculation, how does that work?
The idea, developed by William McGuire, is that if you expose people to a weak, easily refutable version of a persuasive argument or misinformation before they encounter the stronger version, it helps them build up counter-arguments and resistance.
So you give them a little dose of the bad stuff so they can fight off the real thing later.
Essentially, yes. It triggers their defenses. They start thinking about why the weak argument is wrong, which prepares them when they face the more compelling version.
And there's a really cool modern example of this, right? That game.
Yes, the Go Viral game. This was developed by researchers to combat COVID-19 misinformation.
How did it work? Did it just show people examples of fake news?
It went a step further. It actually had players take on the role of someone spreading misinformation. They learned about common manipulation tactics using emotional language, scapegoating, citing fake experts, pushing conspiracy theories by actively using them in the game to gain followers or credibility.
Whoa. So you learn to spot the tricks by trying them yourself.
Exactly. And the research showed it worked. People who played the game got better at spotting manipulative tactics in real social media posts, felt more confident in their ability to do so, and were less likely to say they'd share misinformation themselves.
That's brilliant. An active way to learn critical thinking about this stuff.
It's a promising approach, yeah. Engaging people actively rather than just passively warning them.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Social pain driving connection, the bystander effect, conformity, obedience, then snap judgments, biases like the FAE and self-serving bias, cognitive dissonance, persuasion, and even inoculation against bad information. What's the big picture here? What does it all mean?
I think the big takeaway is just how powerfully and often invisibly the social situation shapes us. We're constantly balancing this deep, innate need to belong, to connect, which drives conformity and sometimes even obedience.
Against these internal mental shortcuts and biases that help us navigate a complex social world quickly but often inaccurately, while also protecting our own ego.
Exactly. Social psychology helps us see those invisible strings. It reminds us that often Uh, Seemingly bad behavior isn't necessarily down to someone being a bad person, but might be heavily influenced by the pressures and dynamics of that specific moment, that specific context. The situation matters hugely.
Understanding the power of the situation and connecting this all back to where we started with Marissa Mize and that theme of loneliness. The research on just how vital social connection is pretty stark, isn't it?
It's absolutely fundamental. We often talk about diet, exercise, not smoking, but social connection. It's right up there, maybe even more critical for sheer survival.
What does the data actually show?
Well, studies have found that social isolation, just the objective lack of connection, can have a massive impact on mortality rates. One meta-analysis suggested its effect was maybe 6 times greater than that of cigarette smoking.
6 times, wow. And loneliness itself, the feeling of distress from being isolated?
That, too, is directly linked to poor physical health. Things like increased inflammation, higher risk of heart disease, weakened immune system. We are profoundly wired to connect. Being cut off is, biologically speaking, a threat.
Which brings us to a final, maybe challenging thought for you, the listener, to mull over.
Go for it.
If connection is that essential for our health, for our survival, are the very social psychological tendencies we've been talking about, our reliance on quick, flawed judgments, our susceptibility to group pressure and exclusion, maybe even our modern online bubbles, are these things actually undermining one of our most fundamental biological needs?
That's a heavy question. Are our own social survival instincts in this modern context starting to work against our long-term well-being?
Something to think about, perhaps, the next time you find yourself in a crowd or making a snap judgment about a stranger or feeling that pressure to just go along.